In this presentation, we will be exploring race, marriage, class, and gender. While we navigate through this video, you will note that although these topics are unique and have its own place in American history, they are linked and have an effect on each other. Race in America is a subject that has been of much controversy throughout history and is a much debated topic in modern times. Because the United States has become somewhat of a melting pot with all nationalities holding a place within our residence, the conversation about race is something that is constant in our nation. Dating back to the 17th century, slavery was present in the United States. The slave trade continued through the 19th century. Between the years of 1789 and 1861, slavery was abolished by law, beginning with some states but taking longer in others. However, until the 1960s, African Americans were still stripped of equal rights. With the slave trade, 4 million Africans were transported to the Americas. During these times, slaves endured both verbal and physical abuse. Stripped of basic laws to protect their well-being, families were separated, women were sold into marriage, and many died of a result of poor health and corporal punishment administered by their masters. With the psychological abuse also came the word nigger. The word is still present in modern times and continues to carry much emotion between African Americans and the white population. James Baldwin gives his perspective on the use of the word in this video.
This, anyone who's ever tried to live knows this. So what you say about somebody else, anybody else, reveals you. What I think of you as being is dictated by my own necessities, my own psychology, my own fears and desires. I'm not describing you when I talk about you. I'm describing me. Now here in this country we've got something called a nigger. It doesn't in such terms, I beg you to remark, exist in any other country in the world. We have invented the nigger. I didn't invent him. White people invented him. I've always known, I had to know by the time I was 17 years old. What you were describing was not me, and what you were afraid of was not me. It had to be something else. You had invented it, so it had to be something you were afraid of, and you invested me with. Now that's so. No matter what you've done to me, I can say to you this, and I mean it. I know you can't do any more, and I got nothing to lose. And I know, and I've always known, and really always, that's part of the agony. I've always known that I'm not a nigger.
During slavery, many African Americans took a stand against their masters and in the name of rights and freedom. In one of our classes, we learned of a slave named Suki. The story is titled, A Slave Named Suki Resisting Master's Advances. The story is about a slave that is named Suki and her master, married to Sarah Ann, makes constant advances towards her. During these times, it was not unusual for masters to take advantage of the situation and of the slaves, especially women. On one particular day, while Suki was making soap in the kitchen, her master became especially aggressive towards her, leaving her with no other alternative than to fight back. In the exchange, Suki's master was severely burnt, but could not say anything because his wife would find out. A few weeks later, he sold Suki back into the slave trade. While Suki was a slave, she was also a woman that not only took a stand in the name of freedom, but also for women's rights. This leads us to our next topic in this presentation, gender. Gender is a word that has evolved through history. It began as a term of binary definition, meaning man and women. But because of evolution, it has taken a broader meaning, no longer considering only two sexes. From a sex perspective, the word has graduated to consider gender not only from a female-male perspective, but also from a transgender, heterosexual, homosexual place. Attached are some images that we covered in this class. The images are powerful and speak of gender. Because the term has changed in many ways, it has brought on a lot of controversy in terms of gender equality. In this class, we learned of a photo taken by Donna Gottschalk that pretty much summed up how women and men were feeling in terms of gender rights for homosexuals. The woman holding the poster writes, "I am your worst fear, I am your best fantasy," meaning that while discrimination exists against gays, some of the same people that are against them take pleasure in knowing they exist. A contradictory stance that is confusing and limiting to gender equality. Another gender equality topic we discussed was the movement titled Dykes on Bikes. This group of lesbians came out of San Francisco and have expanded throughout America for gay rights. They state, gays can pay taxes, gays can vote, gays can be soldiers, and gays can marry. Marriage being the latest battle with gender equality. Marriage is a subject that is directly linked to gender and has shared some change throughout the years. Because this is something that began in America by only recognizing a union between a man and a woman, it has been another subject that sex and gender equality has taken on in the last decades. Class is something that is present in our everyday lives and something that is hard to escape. Tuning into TV stations, middle class is all we hear about. When the president addresses the nation, a lot of times the argument is about class and where the country is going. But this is a phenomenon that not only is talked about in the media, but really in most places. At work, we are focused on salary and healthcare to make sure we maintain the class that we are used to. In America, class is something that we typically divide between low, middle, and high. Although that seems like a division that is straightforward, there is a constant struggle that happens between the three and ties into the economy, race, gender, and equality. As discussed in Lott's essay, American exceptionalism does exist in the United States to a degree. Class is a concept that plagues most residents of the world. Truth is, a lot of people around the world live in poverty and belong to the less appealing lower class. But what this means is different in America. The way we define low class or poverty is a very different reality than what other nations experience. While we have a low class, the reality is that Americans, even if poor, have access to resources that other places in the world do not. An argument to be made is that people that live or are born into lower class in America suffer from upward mobility, which means that moving from one class to another is extremely hard to break. And most remain in the class that their parents did. At the beginning of this video, I said that even though these subjects hold an individual place in American history, they are all somewhat linked and affected by one another. I hope that in this video I was successful at explaining the importance of each